Welcome to Manga's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 16, The Half-Elf Godkin. The voice suddenly spoke. Turning back, they found an elf standing about 10 meters away from them. He had a cold-looking but handsome face, with each eye being a different color. He was definitely not a servant. They could feel that this elf was used to ordering others around. One could feel the haughtiness that was radiated around him. What? Ainz let out a surprised voice that no one else could hear. There shouldn't have been anyone there, he was sure. Ainz and Mare may have missed him, but there's no way Aura would have as well. He had not been invisible either. Ainz would have seen him if that was the case. Maybe he deceived Ainz's eyes with a special concealment skill, while using invisibility at the same time to hide from Aura. Or else, he teleported here. Shit. I should have deployed delayed teleportation. Aura moved gracefully to position herself between Ainz and that elf, while Mare took on a fighting stance, gripping his staff with his two hands. In contrast to the twins, the elf didn't change his stance at all. Ainz found him full of gaps, but maybe that was the opponent's attempt to bait them. A skilled warrior could probably judge if he was being genuine or if it was a bluff, but Ainz couldn't. Ainz moved a little and tried waving his hand to the elf. The elf didn't turn his gaze at all. So, he couldn't see through Ainz's perfect unknowable. Ainz turned to look at the twins. His orders before the infiltration were, in case we were to meet any mysterious individual, focus on gathering intel from them until they attack us. Aura nonchalantly extended her hand to grasp her necklace. The twins probably intended to gather the information while having a discussion among themselves. He could understand their intentions, but they were being a bit rash. If it were Ainz, he would have immediately attacked the infiltrators if they made any suspicious movements before him. Touching equipment was the same as drawing a gun in his eyes. Expecting the mysterious elf to start attacking them at any moment, Ainz readied himself to meet him with magic at any time. But he ended up tilting his head in puzzlement after observing the elf. There's no change in the elf's attitude. He saw Aura's actions, but didn't look like he was particularly bothered by them. Was it because he was highly confident in his strength, or was it because he couldn't understand what Aura was doing? Or maybe he was trying to gather information just like they were, and so was hesitating to attack them. What's the meaning of this? Those eyes. I don't remember betting any dark elves. No, maybe I did. Let me test you then. The elf's air of intimidation became stronger. It even felt like the elf had swelled up a little. Tis, Aura clicked her tongue. Body of effulgent barrel. Who? So you can withstand this. This is probably the first time ever that I've seen someone being able to do that. Hey, why did you point killing intent at us? Do you want to die? Indomitability. Ha ha. The elf laughed like he had just heard the greatest joke. Aura furrowed her brows in a manner that screamed danger. She made a fist with a scary amount of force behind it, but gradually loosened it as Ainz continued to watch. Greater resistance. That was splendid. No, I see. I never even had an inkling. Grandchildren, I see. I understand now. So even if it doesn't awaken in the children, it could awaken the grandchildren's generation. To think that I didn't realize it, that was somewhat stupid of me. What nonsense are you muttering about? Greater potential. No, it just means I had the right idea all along. Well then, my grandchildren. What the heck is he saying? He seems to be having some sort of misunderstanding. Eh? No way, are you Bikubikuchigama-samas? That made Ainz panic for a moment. He realized that there was a possibility that Bikubikuchigama had arrived in this world alone and left this guy behind. But there doesn't seem to be any slime bits left in him. Maybe he can change his form, like solution. Chigama. What are you talking about? No. In that case, could it be Kemichin-san? Yomaiko had a sister named Kemichin. She had made an elf character, but as she wasn't that into Yggdrasil, he barely knew anything about her. You there, you're a pure elf, right? Oops. Breath of Magic caster. What is this odd question? There's no way you don't know who I am, right? We know. Yes, we know. The two of you are shit at acting. Their perfunctory attitude and the monotone reply were enough to make Ainz retort unintentionally. The elf didn't believe them either, opening his mouth in surprise. To think that you didn't know, it's impossible, good grief. I heard dark elves live near the borders, but to think you are so uncultured. The elf sent them an intense glare. I will forgive this once because you are my grandchildren, but ignorance is a sin. I will educate you thoroughly under my guidance. Even if you say you will teach us. Wait, actually, who are you? I am just making sure, but you are the king of the elves, right? or likely made that conjecture because the Elf King was the only strong person they were informed about. Life essence. Who? Ainz let out a voice in surprise. The Elf's HP pool was huge. It easily surpassed the Pleiades and was probably at least level 70 by Yggdrasil's standards. This made him an opponent they couldn't be careless around. Ha. I am stunned. What did your parents teach you until now? There shouldn't be anything more important than the name of the pinnacle of all the elven races, at present anyway, and the king of the elves, the Haugen. Ainz curse. He expected this, but he couldn't help but curse after receiving confirmation. All their effort until now to stay hidden was in vain. He could only lament at all of their wasted efforts. Now, they would have to kill this person, the greatest combat entity, probably in this nation, one that they could have expected to decimate the forces of their hypothetical enemy nation, the Theocracy. They certainly couldn't leave him alive after this. Overriding his memories was one option if they could incapacitate him and make him unable to resist, but after seeing his life essence, Ainz realized that this king's battle strength, his HP to be more precise, was surprisingly huge for a denizen of this world. Of course, they would win without a doubt if they fought normally. There are 3 level 100 entities here after all, but it would probably be hard to incapacitate him without killing him, as holding back here could turn out to be a mistake. Considering his sudden appearance, it's highly likely that this self-decim had some abilities unknown to them. It was dangerous to prioritize incapacitating him when they didn't have enough information on his true strength. After seeing that Akemichan's name wasn't mentioned, he was 90% sure that there was no relation between them. If there was any, she would have named him something recognizable. He would only tell him if they were driven to the wall, if he really was the Yamaiko household's child. The king. Is it fine for you to be here? Aren't the humans attacking? Why would you immediately go over there and save your people? Mana essence. I see. Even Decim's mana was quite high for this world's denizens. It was about the same as Shaltier's. HP and MP. Taking elven culture into account, he most likely had the same class as Mare, a druid. A backline druid, to be specific. Why should I do something like that? Seems like you are misunderstanding what being a king means. The king is someone who should be venerated as supreme existence by his people, not someone who works for them. Mercy is the only thing the superiors give to those inferior. Understood. And mercy can only be pleaded for, not demanded. They should be satisfied even if they don't receive it. What the hell was this guy saying? Ainz was stunned. If Decim was really being serious, then there's something wrong with his brain. Ainz even found the elves pitiful for having such a king. So you don't feel like saving them? But, well, I can agree with a part of what you said. Yes. We can't say he is entirely wrong either. Ha. Ainz stared at the twins' faces, flabbergasted at their replies. It didn't seem like a tactic to loosen the opponent's tongue by flattering him. Which part of his utterance did they think was acceptable? No, maybe it's me who was in the wrong. Maybe that is how a king should think. Jerknev also had an air like that about him. How is the Quago king like? That one was too servile. Who? As expected of my grandchildren. Even though unlearned, your minds can understand the truth. Ah, not again. I wasted time, I have my own tasks to do. Magic ward fire. But you made one big critical mistake. Only the supreme beings can be objects of veneration, not a small fry elf like you. Well, you can get venerated however you want as long as it's only the elves around here, I guess. No, that's completely wrong. But they won't change even if I approach them, and it's not like I don't understand their feelings. If only they made friends outside of Nazarick. From this point of view, I have hopes for Shizu, who became friends with that girl with the scary eyes. This trip was a failure, unfortunately. No, considering our talk on the way back, even Shizu's a bit, as I thought, only Seebas. Ah, I am thinking about useless things again. What? Supreme beings. The Dark Elves have such oral traditions. Decim pondered a bit and slightly shook his head. Well, whatever. I can just hear about it in detail later. Do you really have the time for it? Like I said before, isn't the human country knocking on your doors right now? Ainz was flustered at the time he had wasted, so he immediately cast the next spell. Full state of life. Right at that moment, a rumbling came from under them, shaking the floor. It looked like the Theocracy finally brought out the siege engines. The twins and Decim turned to look at the floor and closed their mouths. Ainz continued to cast magic. Full state of mana. Tis. Humans are really troublesome. I could go over and wipe them out myself, but it's bothersome. Let's go. Where are you telling us to go? Penetrate up. I haven't thought about it, but, well, nowhere should be a problem with my strength. To think you had no plans, aren't you the worst, and what are you going to do if we follow you? Is it Earth? It would be a waste if I got it wrong. Ainz hesitated for a moment, before taking out a scroll and activating it. Earth Master. Decim stared intensely at Or's body. You are still a child, huh? It will be some time before you mature, but there's nothing to be done about it. I have already waited for this long. A few decades is too long to be seen as a mere miscalculation, but we will just have to think of it as inconsequential. You ask, what will happen if you come along, right? The answer is simple. You will have children with me. Eh? What are you even talking about? Greater luck. You too. Decim turned his gaze to Mare. After the women become pregnant, it takes time before they can bear a child again. I expect more from you on that account. You will also be making multiple children alongside me. I assume the blood will be further diluted, but seeing how it awoke in the grandchildren's generation, it should be possible for the great-grandchildren as well. I should take time to experiment. It will be troublesome, but I will probably have to take some people along with us to become your partners. But why are you wearing a female's attire even though you are a boy? Is it the Dark Elves tradition? Honestly, the fact that you are not a pure elf is a bit irritating, but it's far better than extending my hand to all the humanoid races. Or and Mare stared at Decim with their mouths agape. Well, I don't mind if you don't understand it yet. Let's go. He was unsure what Decim was thinking, but he approached the twins who stood rooted to their place and extended his hand towards Or. Ainz brushed that hand away. Determining the action as an attack, perfect unknowable got dispelled. Before Decim could turn to look at Ainz in surprise, his bony fist planted itself in Decim's face. Decim flew away, sprawling on the ground. This fetish pervert. To think you dare to stare lecherously at the girl entrusted to me by my friend. Die. While he continued to hurl abuse, the small part of him that managed to stay cool clicked his tongue at his mistake. He went through all that trouble to maintain perfect unknowable, but ended up throwing a punch because he lost his temper. There's nothing more wasteful than this. Ainz's emotions would be suppressed if they crossed a certain line. He would have acted more rationally just now had that been triggered. Instead of punching the guy, he would have cast instant death magic on him. However, it didn't trigger, probably because he was more disgusted than angry. The extent of that emotion probably didn't cross the line either. What? Decim stood up in a fluster, with blood flowing from his nostrils. But he didn't receive much damage. Life essence showed Ainz that only a little bit of his HP was gone. Even though he received Ainz's full-powered punch defenselessly, that's all it managed to do to him. There's a possibility that he was faking it with a skull-like false data life or some equipment, but that was most likely not the case. Ainz showed his open palm to the twins, making a pose to tell them not to move. From his estimates of Decim's HP and MP, he seemed to be above level 70, but below level 80. That said, although it's very unlikely, they should be on guard against one possibility. Yggdrasil had no such classes, but maybe this world had some that wouldn't raise HP and MP when leveling up. Those could make it possible so that someone is at level 100, but their MP and HP would stay at level 70. He would probably be right in assuming that there was nothing like that, but there is no such thing as an absolute. The three of us can gang up and but that's a bad idea for now. At least not until we figure out the method behind his teleportation. While Ainz continued to think up their battle tactics for the hereafter, Decim raised his voice. An undead. Why, here, and so suddenly? He turned his gaze to the twins. Is one of you a necromancer? Ainz answered before the two could speak. Just like you have surmised. These two are peerless necromancers, and I am their guardian who was born from the power of these two and their parents, from the combined powers of 4 people. I will definitely not allow the weak to touch them. I wouldn't mind you taking them away on the dawn of the day you defeated me, but... Ainz used his full effort to laugh scornfully, trying to anger the opponent. Well, I think that's impossible for you, right? Phew. Decim removed his hand that had been pressing down on his nose. It seemed like the bleeding had already stopped. I am a little surprised. To make me bleed, how many decades, no, centuries has it been? I see. You're strong enough to match your boast, but that's not the way to speak to a king. That said, this is rather fortunate. Rejoice, I shall teach you the difference between our strengths and discipline you. He said those words while looking at Or and Mare. It looked like he really believed Ainz. So, Ainz continued to think.